Okay, I'm late. Oh, okay, I can do that. Oh, how's today? Big and wet means it's less likely to be difficult. Maybe, we'll see. Who knows? Oh.
The weather outside is frightful, and inside is so delightful. Seems to know place to go. Let's go, let's go. Well, it was written by a Jewish person, I think.
It was, as were many things, in fact. There's nothing like super not Jewish about that song, right? It's not like a big, well, I haven't looked at all the
But that's
verses.
They made all the holiday Christmas songs not religious because they were written by Jews.
There you go.
So they weren't talking about Jesus anymore.
Nope.
It's really, I heard a podcast about that.
No, it's really a thing. You're right.
Like all these guys, they wrote these songs. They're like, oh, let's make it about weather and coziness and fire.
Chestnuts.
And yeah.
Yeah. So quite a tactic, quite a technique. Oh, it's so beautiful.
It is.
Look at this. My goodness. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
I imagine if you are joining us online, you're wondering, why is there such a flurry going on here? There's a flurry because there's a flurry. Mm-hmm. There's snow.
Maybe there's a flurry where they're at too.
Maybe.
But maybe not.
If you are online and you're joining us, tell us in the chat if there is snow where you are or not. Let us know. We are going to begin on page 70. Eran and I spent the last 20 minutes playing with printers because that is what one does on Shabbat morning sometimes. So we do know what we're doing, but if we're doing this a little bit, it's because the way that it printed was perhaps a little different than how we had initially hoped it would print. It'll be very exciting.
But the songs will be
A service on the fly.
right, hopefully.
Maybe. We'll see. All right, we'll begin on page 70 by welcoming ourselves and each other into this space. Hine ma tovu manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manai, shevet achiot gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achiot gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manai, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manai, shevet achiot gam yachad. Good morning.
Good morning.
That was the beginning of a good morning. Now we continue with our good morning on page 68. We're going backwards in the prayer book just to throw us off a little bit with a blessing, thanking God. In general, it's like a good morning thank you for existence, which we can forget we need to do sometimes, but it's useful to remind ourselves and each other that we exist is a good thing, as it turns out. So this melody is an Eran Zebo melody, if I'm correct.
Yes, it is.
So some of us may know it, and it may be new for some of us.
Correct.
But we'll, I'm sure, get it eventually.
Should we do a little Yalai first?
Let's do a little Lila.
Because, historically, I think that has come to existence to teach the melody.
That's true.
So you don't have to focus on the melody and the words.
Yep.
We start with just the melody, and then we add the words. We do that a good amount.
It's kind of like how I need everything to be in the morning. I just need to focus on one thing before I can focus on multiple
They
things.
say angels only focus on one thing at a time.
Oh,
Yeah.
harder for us humans.
Try that. All right. Try it.
That melody sounded like snow falling to me a little bit. Continue on page 76. I was talking to a friend of mine just last night, actually, and she said, I don't know whether this is a very Jewish thing, but I have this feeling that the people that have died, their souls stick around, and she said, sometimes I get wisps of grandma. That's what she was saying. And I said, it is actually very Jewish, the idea that your soul, which is eternal, can spend time all over the place forever and ever, regardless of whether your body's around to house that soul. And it makes, I think of our bodies and our souls every time we offer these two prayers on page 76 and 78, a blessing that thanks God for our bodies, and then a second blessing that thanks God for our souls. And we say the blessing separately because these two parts are what come together to make us wholly ourselves while we're here in this form on this earth. And it takes both of those components to make us full, and our soul is eternal. Our soul is forever. So no matter who we are or where we are or how we are or aren't, whether we can recognize it, our soul was here before we got here, even though it was us, and will be here after we go, even though it is us. And that's the mystery of faith sometimes. So we have one of the melodies that we do sometimes connects these two prayers together. So we move straight from one prayer into the other, which I love because it kind of connects this idea that it takes both of the pieces that we think in this prayer for us to be fully ourselves. So we'll begin on page 76 and then continue on page 78. Continue on page 80 with our Nisim B'chol Yom, those daily miracles that get us from zero to present. And I'll tell you, the religious school is not joining us today during the Torah service, which I'm very sad about. So I'm going to tell you some of what they shared during Tefillah this morning, some of the things that they were grateful for that helped get them from zero to here. And somebody said coffee on behalf of their parent. Somebody was very grateful for the ability to play with Legos, which maybe is helpful in getting from zero to here in this place. Somebody was grateful for sleep, the sleep that enables you to then get up the next day and do the things that you need to do. So I'll encourage you to think of one or two things that happened somewhere between when the alarm went off or whatever got you up this morning got you up, and your moment now sitting here, something between asleep and here that you are grateful for having had happen in order to get you from point A to point B. And we'll offer the blessings together. And you're welcome to join for all of them or just for part of them, up to you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sech bivina lehavchin ben yom uvein laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokev kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten le'ayef koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir sheina me'enai utnuma me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzelem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bat chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara. On the top of page 86, a blessing for the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
And I have it on my to-do list to learn a melody for this one.
Oh,
So
I like
stay
that.
tuned.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I love a melody. He's got a note that says, there's like learn fun new, like we have notes in here. I just looked over and he's got an extra note.
Behind the scenes.
On page 88, once we offer a blessing, we have to do the thing we've blessed. So we said a blessing for the study of Torah, and now we've got to study some Torah. We'll be studying some Torah later on this morning, but in the immediacy, we offer this piece of text on page 88, which reminds us of just how important Torah is.
And we're going to sing it.
We're going to sing it today. Indeed. Elu divarim she'en lahem shiur. Elu divarim she'en lahem shiur. Elu divarim she'en lahem shiur. Ve'elu hein. Elu divarim she'en lahem shiur. Elu divarim she'en lahem shiur. Elu divarim she'en lahem shiur. Ve'elu hein. Kibud afahem u'kibud hasadim ve'hashkamat beit hamidrash shacharim ve'aviv. Elu divarim she'en lahem shiur. Elu divarim she'en lahem shiur. Elu divarim she'en lahem shiur. Ve'elu hein. On page 102, instead of Psalm 150, we wanted to play with something a little bit different today. So this blessing, which is part of this chunk of texts that we often do Psalm 150, and that's what we do from this set of texts, but instead we're going to do a whole different piece. There aren't very many words that you have to know, and you may already know most of them. We're just going to use the very top line in Hebrew. And it is a prayer that reminds us that no matter what we do and say, it's never quite enough to describe how amazing the universe and the world and God is and can be, right? Like that there's a place where we stop, that the universe continues, and that's just the reality of it. And so we do what we can, and then we let go. So we fill our mouths as much as we can, and then we let go. Some of you may know this melody, and for some it may be new. There's a few parts to it, and I'm going to let Aaron take it from here because he's the one who knows this kind of stuff.
Okay, so we do need your help here, and we're going to start with one part, and then if at some point you're picking up another part, and that sounds nicer, just hop to the second part. The first part goes like this, and the whole melody is on the word ilu for this part. And now we say ilu. Second part. Remember, Dusty, if you want at some point to move to the third part, you can do that. But we'll start with two.
We rise for Baruch Hu, page 108. be seated. We'll continue in English in the middle of page 110. Praised are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai! In wisdom you form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created. May they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMeorot. The top of page 112. Pray together the words of Ahava Rabbah. Yeah. Ha'ernenu b'toratecha v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha v'yached levavenu le'ahava u'yira et shemecha v'lo nevosh v'lo nikalem v'lo nikashem le'olam va'ed ki v'shem kodshecha hagadol hanora b'tachu Nagira v'nismecha b'shuatecha. Gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly, you drew us near to you and your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praised be you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch atah Adonai, Habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Continuous Shema. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל, ואמרת להם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף בתל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית, וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, Adonai Elohechem Emet. Pop quiz. For those of you who are doing the tzitzit during this piece of the prayer, this is not a pop quiz because you know why you're doing it. Why do we do this? Why do we kiss our tzitzit during this part of the prayer? Anyone know? Because it's about tzitzit. Exactly, because this part of the prayer is about tzitzit. Okay, does anyone know when the Reform movement started using this part of the prayer again? Correct. So for 100 years, the Reform prayer book, not 100, I'm corrected, more or less? A long time. When the Reform movement started looking at liturgy, and before the Reform movement, I think, was a movement, is what I would say. But for many, many, many years, there's three parts to the Ve'ahavta, the prayer that we think of as Ve'ahavta. There's three parts. And of those three parts, only one of them was in the Reform prayer book for a very long time, because one piece of the prayer was about God's wrath. And we weren't big into God's wrath. And the other piece was about tzitzit. And in the early Reform movement, we disagreed with the idea that Jews should wear something that made us look different, because it was scary to look different, and because that was one of the reasons that people were leaving, or it was one of the perceived reasons that people were leaving or not spending as much time or tending to their Judaism. And so the early reformers in Germany in the 1800s were trying to figure out, I see you. I promise I'll call on you. Sally's going to correct me in 2 minutes. So the early reformers were trying to make Judaism something that people would stay a part of by making it something that was easier for people to be a part of without it being such a painful experience for those people for whom it was a painful experience. And so they removed this piece of Ve'ahavta from the prayer book. And it wasn't until 2006-ish, I think, is when they were working on this particular prayer book, as they were deciding how to build the prayers of this prayer book. They started having discussions about what we might change or bring back that is part of the traditional service. And this is one of the sections that they chose to put into this prayer book. And it took me until I was maybe 28 to know that there were three parts of the Ve'ahavta, and that I had the opportunity to say the second one, and so I like to when I can. Sally, what did I get wrong? Okay. Okay. All right, so I'll say it out loud for the people online. Sally corrects me. In the Union Prayer Book, the Classical Reform Prayer Book, this prayer did exist, has existed, but it didn't exist in the Hebrew. It was one of the readings that you could offer in English, correct? Okay. I stand corrected.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I grew up.
That you would know. Listen, I'm learning new things every day. Sometimes I also just say things and didn't research them beforehand, so it's good to have somebody here who can check me on my knowledge once in a while.
I was in the car once with my son.
Uh-huh.
And Debbie Friedman was singing in Hebrew.
Uh-huh.
And my son said, "Do you know what you're singing?" I said, "Of course I do, because I can recite the whole thing in English."
So you know what it means, unlike sometimes when you're saying something in Hebrew and you don't even know what it means in English, but you knew it in English long before you knew it in Hebrew. So there you go. All right, interlude over. We continue on page 122. I'm realizing that we're doing like a number of fun new different things today. I didn't think of how many things there were.
Another new thing.
Okay,
It's new
so
for me too.
this, in honor of African American History Month, and in honor of next week, which is Parshat B'Shalach, which is the Torah portion in which we get the Song of the Sea, and in honor of me liking an excuse to use this particular melody, there are a few people over time who have done a mashup of Mi Chamocha and a spiritual Wade in the Water. And so we are going to play with that today a little bit. Sure. Turn to page 124. We rise for the Amidah. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufia ki tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Hastei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Gula Lipnei V'Neihem, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. מקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו, אדיר אדירנו, אדוני אדוננו, אדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו ומלכנו, מושיענו ישמיענו, ורחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, נמוך עד לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. To all generations we will declare your greatness, and for all eternity proclaim your holiness. Your praise, O God, shall never depart from our lips. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. You may be seated. Page 133. We'll offer the top of the page. We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. We take the next few minutes for our own thoughts and prayers. Feel free to use the words on the page or the words in your heart. shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol ha'olam. Our Torah service begins on page 244 and will rise as we open the ark. Ein kamocha ba'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Av harachamim etiv avirtzoncha et Zion. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Ki vecha levad batachnu, melech el ram v'nisa, Adon olamim. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, udevar Adonai mirushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kdushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadlu Adonai iti, uneromema Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula, v'hagevura, v'hatiferet, v'hanetzach, v'hahod. Ki chol v'shamayim u'va'aretz, ki chol v'shamayim u'va'aretz. Lecha Adonai הממלכה ועמי נעשה לכל ראש. על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים Hi. I think it took me until now to get here. Do you ever have a day like that? I think today's a day like that. So Marty's already on top of it, but if you don't yet have a Torah Chumash and you'd like one, there are a few over here. Our Torah portion is Parashat Bo. And this Torah portion is both dramatic and logistical. Dramatically, we have the last 3 of the 10 plagues, culminating with the pretty terrible final plague of the death of the firstborn. And mixed in with that 10th plague, we have instructions from God on a new holiday that we will be celebrating from here on out called Passover, Pesach, right? And it comes from this concept of the Israelites being told in advance to take the blood of a lamb, part of the sacrificial lamb, and put it on the doorposts of their house as a sign to the angel of death to pass over their homes so that their firstborn would be spared. When I was studying abroad in Ireland, 2006, 2007, as you can imagine, in Dublin, Ireland, there were Jews, but there were few Jews. And I got it in my head that I really wanted to hold a Seder. So my 20-year-old self, who had never led a Seder before, decided that this was the year and this was the place that I was going to lead a Seder. So I gathered my mostly Irish, mostly not Jewish, mostly very adamantly secular friends to participate in this Seder. They were thrilled. They were very excited. I can recommend nothing higher than a Seder full of people who are excited about a Seder and aren't Jewish, because they've never been to one, so they don't know what they're getting into, and they like to participate in all the things. And as I was preparing for the Seder, I lived in a very small space that year, so I was borrowing a different space, and this space was shared by 3 or 4 people. And one of my friend's roommates took it upon herself to decorate for the Passover Seder. You might know where I'm going with this. I got to the front door, and there were these big slashes of red construction paper taped to the door of the dorm. And she came out, and she was very proud of herself, and she said, "Do you see the blood? Do you see the blood on the doorpost?" And I said, "I sure do." It's the only time that I've had that level of decoration for Passover. But it does speak to something that I think is really interesting, which is that the Passover that we know today comes from this moment, but the rituals and the symbols and what it looks like are so incredibly different from what's described in the Torah, right? The Torah essentially says you have to take an entire lamb and you have to slaughter the lamb. The blood goes on the doorpost. That's one of the most important parts. And then the other important part is that you have to eat the whole lamb, your family. And if your family's not big enough, you can share with another family, but it's like really key that you eat the whole thing within this 24-hour period. There's like this, it's part of the haste that is part of this whole holiday. And we also learn in this Torah portion about the unleavened bread component of Passover. But there's nothing in here that says you sit around a table for 30 minutes to 5 hours, depending on who's in charge of your Seder. There's nothing in here that says you can't eat until 3 hours after you've started. There's nothing in here that says parsley and salt water and haroset, and right? All of these things come about later. And it got me thinking, as I was thinking about this Torah portion, about the way that things start and where they end up. Because this is, if you can imagine this as the history of our people, then what we're reading today is the very first moment that any Israelite began to understand the concept of a thing that has become a really important holiday and tradition in our world. But if you take somebody from 2024 and you put them back in time, or if you take somebody from ancient Israelite Egyptian slavery, and you transport them to now, they'd look around. There's a lot of reasons they'd look around and be confused, but one of them is that what we do now is so different from what this originally looked like. And I don't have any great kind of teaching on that, so much as to say that I think it's interesting to pay attention to the start of something, or to pay attention to where we are and take a moment to think about the start of that thing, whatever the start of that thing might be. Because there is sometimes something to learn from the way that things shift and change and move. And I think there's something beautiful about tending to and paying attention to and honoring and acknowledging the fullness of what an experience has been and is. I think it enhances the moment of the holiday to recognize all that it has been over the years, that it didn't start as a Seder with parsley. And we can be grateful that the Israelites didn't spend 5 hours around a table before they got to eat. And so too can we be grateful that we don't have to put blood on the doorposts of our houses anymore. The other thing that I wanted to poke at a little bit in this Torah portion, and this one I want your actual thoughts. So if you have thoughts, this is the participatory section of our service, the more participatory section. You all participate no matter what. It occurred to me for the first time for some reason this year as I was reading this Torah portion that Moses tells the Israelites to put the blood on the doorposts of their house so that they're safe from the angel of death. And we don't have any moment in which any Israelite goes and knocks on his next door neighbor's house and is like, hey, tonight's going to be really bad. If you want some of my blood, here's some blood for your doorposts. There's no kind of thought about whether or not the Israelites might have any reason to, or desire to, or obligation to, or responsibility to warn their neighbors about this thing that's coming. Now, at first that made me very, very, very uncomfortable. And then as I was reading through the Torah portion, I realized that Moses does in fact say to Pharaoh, this very particular thing will happen if you don't do this. So it's not like Pharaoh doesn't have this warning that the death of the firstborn is a possibility. But the people don't. So I'm curious about just in general what your thoughts are on that, and curious about your thoughts. Sally, do you have a thought? And then Molly has a thought.
Same thing happened in Noah.
Uh-huh.
Because in Noah, the people didn't know the flood was coming.
Mm-hmm.
But Noah did.
So I'll repeat it for the people online. So Sally says the same thing happened in Parshat Noach, right? Noah knows the flood is happening, but none of the people around Noah do. And the commentators say over and over and over again, that's the difference between Noah and Abraham, right? Is that Noah was righteous for his generation, but he made no attempt to warn the rest of the people. And so his righteousness stopped at a point, whereas Abraham is looking out for a larger people, and that's one of the differences. Molly?
Well, this kind of bringing it forward to modern times.
Yeah.
COVID.
Ah.
Back then, people were seeing locusts and all this stuff happening, and somebody comes by and says this blood thing. Well, if there's anything that they don't know, this might be what's happening. And forward to COVID, and people are dying, and so they're saying, some people would get inoculated, but some people were taking stuff that
interesting.
What's there and what's in moderation?
Well, and what you're raising, so for the folks online, Molly raises this parallel, this connection between the idea of putting blood on your doorpost as a protective device and all of the different protective devices that were offered during COVID, some of which were effective and some of which were not effective and some of which were actually dangerous, right, in a whole different way. And that, for me, raises a question of kind of like, how do you know, right? Like, how do you know that blood on the doorpost is going to help, as opposed to perhaps something else, right? If somebody today came and knocked on my door and said, put blood on the doorpost of your house, that's going to protect you, I'm not sure I would do it. I will be honest with you. Now, that's not God telling me, and I imagine if I got a sense that it was God telling me, then maybe I would do that. But how do you know whether or not it's God is another question. Sally?
We're told to put the mezuzah on our door.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And the mezuzah is our kind of like everlasting symbol, right? And that gives us perhaps some protection as well.
As a Jewish home.
It does. Joe?
Back to the original question, it's about Jewish preservation. You know, if the Jewish people had gone out to their neighbors and said, put this blood on your doorpost, it would have defeated God's purpose for, wanting to save the Jewish people as something, special.
One of the pieces of text in the Torah says that the point of this plague is to differentiate between these two groups of people. I'll be honest with you, I'm a little uncomfortable with that. I think it's fair to be uncomfortable with it, and I don't think that means that, I don't think you invalidate Torah by being uncomfortable with it, but I'll name that there's a piece of this Torah portion that makes me a little uncomfortable, because that differentiation and that distinction, while I think it runs through Jewish history, and I think a lot of it has to do with preservation and this desire to survive through a lot of pain and hardship and anguish, it still feels a little icky to me.
Who's to say that they didn't tell the Egyptians and the Egyptians didn't believe them?
Who's to say? That is a great that is a great midrash, right? There's a story to be written in which there are Israelites who do in fact go knock on their neighbors' doors, and either their neighbors don't believe them, or for some other reason it doesn't yield any assistance. I love that. I think that's a beautiful version that we can read into this. It's one of my favorite parts about Torah, right? Is that there's always going to be something that wasn't written down, so it's entirely possible.
I mean, what Molly was saying with COVID, like we told people what to do,
Yeah.
and they chose not to believe.
What does it say about our God? If our God is going to take the firstborn of innocent civilians.
There's a whole other question, right? A whole other hard Utsi question, 100%. And it speaks to what I think was, I like to attribute this to kind of the times in which the Torah was written, because the death of the firstborn is correlated to the beginning of this book, right, in which the Pharaoh has commanded that the midwives kill all of the male children of the Israelites. And so there's a little eye for an eye that one can read into this Torah portion, which for the time was part of how people thought about retribution. It is, I think, very far from how we today think about retribution. And even more so, I think the Talmud spends a great deal of time rolling back this idea of an eye for an eye. So even in 600 of the Common Era, it was uncomfortable enough and enough of a bad idea, clearly enough of a bad idea, that the rabbis of the time said, okay, we understand that our Torah gives us all sorts of moments in which divine retribution or retribution is tit for tat, and we recognize that that's probably not actually the best way for society to move forward in the world. But we have to figure out a way to get around it that doesn't invalidate the Torah. And so they go to great lengths and lots of loop-de-loops to get there, but they do. But I think I think that's one of the key questions here, right? Is that how do you square this like loving God that we hear about in some pieces of Torah and text with this God who is very happy to kill off a bunch of human beings, which are also creations of God?
To back up for a second, Hollywood notwithstanding, do we know or do we think that these neighborhoods were mixed? It seemed to me that since the Hebrews were slaves and the Egyptians were not, that they didn't live in the same neighborhoods and therefore would not have had not only responsibility but maybe even opportunity to tell Egyptians that they needed to do this.
Okay, that's a really good point. And we do hear in the plague prior to this that the area the Israelites lived in had light, even though the plague of darkness affected and impacted all of the Egyptians, which gives one reason to believe that most of the Israelites lived in one particular area. And I think that you can, in the same way that when you have some people who have been separated out enough, not only do they not have neighbors to warn, but they don't have relationships with people outside of the people who they're corralled with. And so it's hard to imagine who or how you'd warn anybody if you don't have any relationships with which to like go interact or knock on doors. That is another piece of this, definitely. Any last thoughts before we actually read a little Torah? Okay. All right. Molly. Molly is our Torah reader today. I'm very grateful for her. And I'll remind you that if any of you are ever interested in reading or chanting Torah, we are always looking for and grateful for Torah readers. You can sign up online. Where do we think the yod is? That's what I'm looking for. Haha. Discovered. All right, if you want to follow along in the text, we are, good Lord, it's so small. That was a blessing. Good Lord! In the blue Torah commentary, we're on page 407, Plout. And if you've got the green book, we're on page 359. And Molly is going to be chanting chapter 10, verses 12 to 14. And I'm going to invite the Phelps to join us on the Bima for the Aliyah today, merely because it's been a while, not that you've been here, but since I've called you up for an Aliyah particularly, and I'm feeling like you should have one. So come on up. Do you want the prayer? I gotta get it for you. There you go. Okay. So I believe. Is it there? No. No, I don't think that's the right one then. Hold on. It's this one. Okay. Let's roll us so you can actually read. Yep.
Baruch et Adonai Hamorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Okay.
Amen. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe Na'tei yadka al eretz Mitzrayim ba'arbeh ve'al al eretz Mitzrayim vayokal et kol esav ha'aretz et kol asher hishir habara. Vayet Moshe et Matehu. Al Eretz Mitzrayim Vadonoi Nihag Rakadim Ba'aretz Kol Hayom Haya V'Kol Halayla Haboker Haya Baruch HaKadim Nasa et Ha'arbeh Vayal Ha'arbeh Al Kol Eretz Mitzrayim Vayanak Ba'Kol Gavu Mitzrayim Kaved Ma'od Lafanav Kol Hayakim Arabeh Kemohu Ve'akarav
Lo Yaken. Asher Koach.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yasher Koach, Molly. And thanks to the two of you, many of you here know it, but these two attend 3 to 4 services on Fridays and Saturdays because they've got a lot of human beings to participate in services with. So I am grateful every time you are here because I know how many places and spaces you could be tuning into. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome. If I may,
You may.
this is the Torah portion that the B'nai Mitzvah would have been for January 24th, 1943,
Uh-huh.
which happens to have been when I was born.
Oh,
Thank you.
wow. You are so welcome.
Kind of a notion going on.
There is. I love it when that happens. It's a Torah portion birthday. That also means you had a birthday recently. So happy birthday belatedly. Just a little bit.
We celebrated. Thank you.
While we have the Torah in our midst, we'll offer a blessing for healing. We're on page 253 if you're in the book. And before we offer the words of the blessing itself, we always share the names of folks in our community that we're thinking of who are in particular need of healing. And I'll invite you to think of those people in your own lives who are in particular need of healing. The visible kinds of healing or the kind of stuff that happens on the inside that you can't always see, but is healing in its own right as well. Our community is thinking of Jacqueline Tara Smith, Deborah Rose, Eileen Kreisman, Ronnie Haber, Ellen Gottlieb, Vanessa Bianco, Paul McCready, Glenn Letts, Carl Wilhite, Ginny Gaston, Cindy Balin, Patty Newby, Joe Giordano, Brian Ward, Joe Dover, Janine Morris, Ron Louie, Sally Wildison, Marnie Good, Sylvia Angel, Marion Laird, Sheldon Robert, William Stangler, Lisa Bush, Patricia Barber, Adrian Heelander, Kyle Asadorian, Paul Norris, Stephen Thrasher, Julie Dorfman, Connie Shane, Laura Halper, Alan Schwartz, Elizabeth Simons, Bob Cook, Tora Knapp, Jason Getlor, and Josh Huttenhaas. If there are additional names to share, other people you're thinking of today, I'm going to invite you to share those names now. I'm thinking a lot today about the hostages who have been returned and the healing that they're still doing. So I'll include all of the folks in that part of the world for whom healing is an ongoing process. We'll pray together on page 253. We will return the Torah to the ark, and as I help her get ready and then return her to her home for the next little bit, we'll rise. V'zot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai
b'yad Moshe.
And continue on the top of page 283, the words of Aleinu. And I'm going to move us through a number of pieces of Aleinu today, so I'll tell you where we are as we go. Starting at the top of page 283. Aleinu l'shabeach l'ador hakol, לתת גאולה ליוצר בראשית,
שהוא שם חלקנו לייחד את שמו,
וגאור עלינו להמליך מלכותו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. Next page at the top. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו, ושכינתו זו, בגובהי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד Edata Yom V'hashivota elevavecha Ki Adonai Hu HaElohim V'shamayim milal Ve'al haaretz mitachat ein od. Top of page 287. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Love to each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand, but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. V'nema v'haya Adonai v'melech al kol haaretz v'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. You may be seated. Always take a moment during our service to honor and remember and name aloud those who have died at this time in years past, and say their names in particular to bring those names into our world in an ongoing way. I'll name on behalf of my father, who's not here, though he usually is right there, that I'm remembering Chris Jensen today, and I name it on purpose because Chris Jensen was one of my dad's oldest friends. And often we find the names of sisters and parents and children. Losing a friend is huge. And Kaddish is for friends too. And I just think it's worth saying that once in a while to remind you that when you are a friend, you are also a mourner, and that counts. So if you are remembering anyone today, whether they are related to you or not, if they were part of your world memorably, please feel free to share their name with us. Our congregation is in the first 30 days of mourning for Dick Baskin, beloved congregant, and Mark Brasham, brother of Carrie Stein and brother-in-law of Dick Stein. We remember on their yard site Mariana Ahrens, Dr. Bert Konowitz, Joyce Lynette, Dr. Randy Stubbs, Joseph Abrams, Frank Allen Coombs, Jill Allen Forleo, Lila Kaufman, Daniel Edelson, Phyllis Mossholder, Rosalie Michaelman, Gana Polakova, Vida Tokar, Ben Bellur, Lillian Block-Brown, Abe Gervin, Louise Posner Joseph, Bessie Nash Judd, Michael Morris, Jeffrey Plotnick, and Robert Alden Bezzo. If there are additional names you'd like to mention today, include in our yard site, please. All those who perished, yep, in the airlines recently, Wednesday night. Janice Moore. We rise together as one community, Mourners Kaddish on page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam u'olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmeid kudusha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'imromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Zichronam Levracha, may their memories be a blessing. You may be seated. We're going to close with a song that we need right now in the world. We always need it, but some weeks I feel we need it more than others. The words in Hebrew are Olam Chesed Yibaneh, and the words in English are May we build this world from love.
Shabbat Shalom.